The sun filtered through the mist like warm honey spilling over the valley, casting soft gold over Mela's farm. Chickens clucked lazily near the coop, dew sparkled along the fence posts, and smoke curled from the chimney of her small cottage. It was the sort of morning that promised nothing extraordinary, and Mela liked it that way. Peace had been rare during the last few years. Border raids from off-world colonies, rising tension between the High Dominion and the Outer Rings. But her valley had remained untouched, preserved like a forgotten page in a chaotic book. Mela wiped her hands on her apron, secured her satchel, and stepped onto the path toward Elson Market. The town square would be brimming with traders by mid-morning, and she needed seed stock, spare fuses for the water condenser, and maybe, if there was enough left, dried sunfruit. As she walked, a flock of birds burst from the trees, circling once above her before vanishing toward the hills. She didn't think much of it. The shuttle tram was nearly full when she reached the outer station. A long steel serpent, it hovered above the rails in complete silence, its panels gleaming like beetle shells. Inside, commuters sat in stiff silence, traders, farmers, 2 Dominion conscripts in gray armor, and a cluster of students with glowing wrist screens. The only open seat was near the back, next to a wide viewport. She made her way toward it, but stopped mid-step. An old man stood in the aisle, gripping the overhead rail with trembling fingers. He wore a dark wool cloak that seemed far too heavy for the weather. His eyes, a pale shade of violet, looked distant and ancient, as if they had seen too many sunsets. No one acknowledged him. No one moved. Mela glanced around. The students avoided eye contact. The conscripts stared through the walls. Even the conductor kept his gaze downcast. The old man's breath rasped softly, each inhale deliberate, each exhale weary. She hesitated only a moment before stepping aside and gesturing. "Please," she said, motioning to her seat. "You need it more than I do." He looked at her slowly. When their eyes met, the air between them shifted, something subtle, a pressure behind her ears, a scent like old ash and summer storms. He nodded, the lines on his face deepening, and sat without a word. The tram lurched forward. Mela steadied herself with one hand on the rail, the other clutching her satchel. For the next few minutes, the shuttle hummed along its route, past broken fields, hovering harvester rigs, and distant ridgelines where the old signal towers still blinked red. She tried to ignore the sideways glances the other passengers sent her. Her kindness had marked her, apparently. Then, just as they passed under the shattered arc bridge, the old man spoke, not loudly, not even directly, but she knew it was meant for her. "You remind me of someone," he said. His voice was dry leaves over stone. "She, too, offered kindness in a time of cruelty. And like you, she did not hesitate." Mela blinked, unsure if she should respond. She managed a quiet, "Was she from around here?" "No," he said. "She was from the skies." He tilted his head toward the window, where 3 Dominion drones zipped past like silver insects. "The world has changed so much since then. Compassion is rare. That makes it powerful." There was a pause. Then he leaned closer, eyes gleaming like heated amethyst. "Remember this word," he said, his lips barely moving. "Arathriel." It sounded ancient, syllables formed from the bones of forgotten tongues. Mela tried to repeat it, but the sound slipped in her throat like oil. She opened her mouth to ask what it meant, but he had closed his eyes. The rest of the journey passed in silence. When the tram docked, he was gone. No one had seen him leave. At the market, Mela moved through the stalls with a strange weight pressing against her thoughts. Every vendor seemed louder than usual, every drone buzzed too close, and the word, Arathriel, echoed in her mind like a bell struck underwater. She jotted it into her notebook with trembling fingers, tucking the page behind her shopping list. By the time she returned to her farm, clouds had gathered low and gray. Something was off. The animals were agitated. Her goat refused to come out of its shed, and the usually lazy hound barked at empty air. She secured the coop, refilled the trough, and went inside. That night, as she stirred a pot of lentils by the hearth, a shadow passed over her home. Not like a cloud. Heavier. colder. She stepped outside just in time to see a black silhouette against the stars, smooth, silent, and vast. Not Dominion tech. Not anything she'd seen before. It didn't linger. It drifted toward the hills and vanished behind them. Mela stood barefoot in the grass, the wind tugging at her braid. Her heart beat faster than it should have. Something ancient stirred in her chest, a memory she never lived. Then, without understanding why, she checked her coat pocket. There, between her fingers, was a scale. It shimmered faintly in the moonlight, an iridescent fragment of something far older than ships or guns or governments. It was warm. In the distance, a low hum rose, a resonance like a distant engine or a beast clearing its throat. Mela looked toward the mountains. Something was coming, and she had given it a place to rest. At dawn, the valley lost its silence. The first sign was the rumble, deep, rhythmic, and unnatural. Mela sat upright in bed before the second pulse struck. A bowl on the shelf tipped, crashing to the floor. Outside, the livestock screamed, and the air quivered with something vast and cold. She pulled on her boots and ran to the door, throwing it open with a force that splintered the latch. What she saw rooted her to the ground. The sky boiled with descending hulls, massive black ships, silent as they pierced the clouds. They bore no markings, no colors of allegiance, just flat angular panels and blinking scarlet eyes like predatory insects. Smaller crafts unfurled from their bellies and began sweeping the valley in rigid formation. A voice crackled overhead, metallic and authoritative. This area is under restricted control of the Dominion Enforcement Fleet. Residents are to remain inside their homes. Do not approach the perimeter. This is for your protection. It wasn't a suggestion. She turned to run back inside, but 3 soldiers in gray-banded armor were already approaching from the slope. Their boots crunched in the gravel, and their helmets shimmered with projection overlays. The lead one raised a gloved hand, signaling her to stop. "Mela Trevin of Plot 77B," he said, voice flat and amplified. "You are to come with us." She stared at them, stunned. "Why?" "That is not for you to ask," he replied. "You are not under arrest. Yet. Cooperation will ensure your safety." One of them stepped forward and grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly. Her first instinct was to resist, to pull away, but something in the soldier's posture, in the way they flanked her like she was a loaded weapon, made her pause. She let herself be led. They escorted her past the barn, where soldiers were setting up post fences, and to the far side of the hill where a temporary command outpost had been erected. Great tents snapped in the wind. Anti-grav pallets hovered beside armored walkers. Every movement was surgical, precise. This wasn't a random patrol, it was an occupation. She was ushered into a metal structure and seated in a sterile chamber lit by a harsh white beam. An officer entered, older, sharp-eyed, uniform perfectly creased. He introduced himself as Commander Lorne. "Do you know what you've done, Miss Trevin?" he asked, sitting across from her without waiting for an answer. Mela folded her arms. "I gave up my seat on a tram." His eyes narrowed. "You gave up your seat to a being who is not what he appeared. Do you know who he was?" She shook her head slowly. "That," Lorne said, tapping a control pad, "was Orvarath of the Third Sky, exiled general of the Galactic Accord, presumed dead since the Burning Treaty collapse. You didn't just offer kindness. You initiated a forgotten protocol embedded in his species' blood right sequence." The words meant nothing to her. She blinked. "I don't understand." He leaned forward. "Do you recall anything strange he said to you?" She hesitated. "A word." He whispered something. "Arathriel." The moment she said it, the lights in the chamber flickered. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed. Commander Lorne exhaled sharply. "Then it's confirmed. You triggered the Echo cipher." Mela stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "that you have unknowingly activated a key buried centuries ago, an ancient code tied to the Skyborn. And it seems, your land was chosen long before you were born." He tapped again. A 3D map of her farm sprang to life above the table. Underneath the soil, far beneath the surface, pulsed a grid of dormant energy, conduits spiraling toward a central chamber. Her barn sat directly atop it. Beneath your property lies a sealed vault, locked until the proper command was spoken by a qualified host. That host, Miss Trevin, is you. She laughed, but it came out wrong. I'm a farmer. You are also the last living descendant of one of the original Accord binders, Lawrence said. Your blood carries traces of the Sky Pact. Orvarath must have sensed it. That's why he gave you the cipher. Her stomach twisted. I didn't ask for any of this. Nevertheless, he said coldly, you've inherited it. And it's now a security threat. Before she could reply, alarms erupted across the base. Red light bathed the walls. A distant explosion thundered. Commander Lawrence stood sharply and activated his comm. They've arrived early. Defensive formations. Hold ground at all costs. Mela stood. What's happening? He didn't answer. The door burst open and a soldier sprinted in. Commander, we've got a breach, Sector Delta, near the vault site. A contact just emerged. Not Dominion. The two men left her behind. She bolted. Down the hill, chaos had broken loose. Soldiers fired plasma rounds into the trees. Drones buzzed frantically overhead. But in the confusion, no one stopped her. She ducked past a park skimmer, over a broken fence, and ran toward the barn. There, beneath the old structure, the earth had split open. Not in rubble or fire, but light. Blinding, golden blue light streamed from a newly formed crevice. Runes spiraled along the exposed stone like liquid glyphs. Someone stood in front of it. A man, taller than anyone she'd seen, with silver eyes and a cloak that shifted color with the wind. He turned toward her and smiled faintly. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come, he said. She stopped short. Who are you? I am Kale. I was once called Flamesworn. Now, just another watcher of old promises. He extended a hand. And you, Mela Trevin, have just opened the last gate. Behind him, the light pulsed again, revealing a chamber below, shaped like a star, lined with dragon steel and murals of winged beings. In one of the murals, unmistakably, was her own face, standing beside a golden egg. I don't understand, she whispered. Why me? Kale's expression softened. Because when you could have turned away, you didn't. And that simple kindness changed everything. Another explosion rocked the sky. Dominion gunships were descending, and streaks of plasma fire carved through the clouds. Kale stepped aside. You need to choose. Go back, or step into your inheritance. Her heart thundered in her chest. She looked down into the chamber, at the glowing egg resting atop a pedestal of bone and crystal. It pulsed with life, life that responded to her. The world was shifting, and she stood on the fracture line. She stepped forward into the light. The vault's light dimmed behind her as Mela descended the steps. The deeper she went, the less it felt like walking and more like falling, each step drawing her away from the world she knew. The air was thick with old power, humming through the walls like a breath too large for a single room. Glyphs lit beneath her feet with each movement, shifting in tone and color, as if recognizing her. She gripped the satchel at her side instinctively, though she had long forgotten what it contained. Kale walked beside her in silence. His presence no longer seemed human. He moved with an eerie grace, and in the half-light she could swear shadows curled away from him rather than clung to him. Yet something about his voice still calmed her, like an old song remembered from a half-forgotten dream. They reached the heart of the chamber, where a massive structure loomed, part altar, part cradle. Upon it rested the egg, luminescent and veined with glowing gold. As Mela approached, it pulsed once, then again, in rhythm with her heartbeat. It has waited for you, Kale said quietly. Through wars, through silence, through the extinction of the Skyborn, it remained. Because it remembered. Mela stepped closer, drawn to the warmth emanating from it. What is it? Not what, he said. Who? This is the last of the celestial drakes. Born not of flame, but memory. Its consciousness has slumbered since the Accord fell, Until you awakened it with the cipher. Her hand hovered above the shell. What happens if I touch it? You complete the bond. It will remember what it was, and it will make you remember what you are. She didn't understand, but something within her did. Her fingers brushed the shell. A surge of sensation cracked through her, like falling into a storm of voices and wind and wings. Her mind split open. Images burst into her vision, cities floating among the stars, dragons wreathed in flame and thunder, a council of giants bowing to a single voice, hers. But not her. Not Mela the farmer. Mela, a corebinder. Chosen by the Sky Pact. Guardian of the last link between species once united in peace. She gasped, stumbling backward, eyes wide. The egg cracked. Kale stepped away, his expression unreadable. There is no going back now. A final fracture ran down the shell. Then it split open in silence, revealing a creature unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Slender, serpentine, its body was scaled in hues that changed with the light, sky blue to midnight violet to flame orange. Two eyes opened, ancient and intelligent, and locked with hers. It did not speak aloud. It didn't have to. You are mine, as I am yours. The words rang inside her skull, not as sound, but as presence. Outside the chamber, thunder cracked, no longer distant. Dominion ships had begun their assault in earnest. Screams echoed from the valley as energy blasts rained across the hillsides. Mela could feel them, every strike, every wound the land suffered. Something had connected. She was no longer separate from it. She turned to Kale, breath trembling. We have to stop them. He gave her a long look. You do not have the strength to face a Dominion fleet alone. I'm not alone. Behind her, the newborn dragon unfurled its wings. The chamber trembled. Kale nodded once. Then you must rise. The dragon surged forward, coiling around her without touching. For a terrifying moment, everything around her disintegrated into light and force and memory. Then air. Wind. Cold. They burst through the earth in a whirlwind of stone and energy, ascending into the sky like a comet. Dominion fighters veered off course, caught in the shockwave. Soldiers screamed and fell back, blinded by the sudden glare. Mela sat astride the dragon without knowing how. It moved with her thoughts. Its name, Saren, formed in